Steered by our many years partner and friend from Germany, Professor Friedhelm Schwenker from the University of Ulm, as a keynote lecture, Deep Learning Architectures in Emotional Artificial Intelligence. You are welcome, Friedhelm.
Thank you very much, Eugene. Yeah, we know each other for a long time, maybe 10 years or so. Thank you very much for this kind invitation to give this lecture in the morning today. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for joining this talk. Today, I would like to discuss a little bit on my research topics. So my research topics are I would say, of course, I'm from the Institute of Neural Information Processing. So neural networks are I would say, my core research interest. But I'm always looking for applications. Yeah, I must say my background is mathematics. So I've studied, did my diploma and doctoral thesis in applied mathematics, functional analysis and approximation theory then later. And therefore I came to the artificial neural networks research field because when I started in the 90s, yeah, so there were a lot of different models, and I tried to analyze these models, and I started with very simple neural network models, so-called associative memories or Hopfield networks, and so we tried to analyze, and we found out that that it's pretty difficult, and so more and more applications came into my research field. One could say because the analysis of neural networks is too difficult, but this was that is perhaps a little bit too simple. So today I would like to discuss a little bit on applications in the field of effective computing. So here's a brief outline of my talk. This is mainly concentrated on the applications of fact recognition and artificial neural networks and some learning paradigms, so-called partially supervised learning paradigms in this field. Let's start with the idea of human-machine interaction. Here where we have a user that is interacting with a technical system, and this user, the user is working with the system and has to do some, let's say, has to give some commands or has to write some commands over the keyboard. But to have a, let's say, completely informed technical system, the computer or the technical system should be informed about the, let's say, the full state of user activities, of his or her intentions, and this is my part here, on the user's active state, effective state. So it might be that the user is, let's say, is tired or is mentally overloaded, or maybe in a e-learning system, the user is under challenged by the given task. And therefore, I would say it would be a smart technical system if the user can react in a proper way to these to the effective states. So these effective states can be, as I said, defined by stress or mental overload, or the traditional effective states defined by Friesen and Ekman. So these the basic emotions. So there are many different models to classify these models. So typically these systems, I would say these e-learning system could be a good idea to implement these effective state recognition. I think I must change this a little bit. Oh, this is better. So these human affective states is expressed in many modalities. So the face recognition, or the facial expressions and the speech, I would say, are the channels that are typically investigated, but also body movement are of interest, head movements, or let's say action with the hands or arms. These are important, and also biophysiological parameters like the EEG or EMGs from let's say here from the neck, so showing stress and so on, or blood pressure, all these kinds of measurements. It is not easy to classify these affective states. So also from a medical or psychological point of view, these affective states cannot be described in an easy way, let's say by a set of 100 or 200 if then else rules, and then it would be easy to classify the affective states of the state of a human. These affective states are typically multimodal. They are hidden for the investigation of a psychologist or so. So therefore, I would say, so this is my, let's say, my idea here is why effect recognition is a pattern recognition and machine learning task. So this is first, I would say, this multimodality. It is, let's say, the weak expression of the affective states. It is also connected with uncertainty in the signals. Here's a typical situation. Oh, sorry. Here's a typical situation of data recording. So we have collected several data sets. Here's one with different cameras, Kinect sensor. We have bio sensors. So this is a highly multimodal data set, and it's freely available, or not freely available, but it is available. So if you want to use it, this is possible. Annotation by experts, so is expensive. Data is available typically very easy. So there are lots or tons of data in the internet or somewhere, but this data is useless if we do not have an annotation to the data. And particular annotation of effective states is very expensive. Here's a simple calculation for our data set. So we would expect, I think it's underestimated. So here we want to annotate all modalities. If we want to ask five students. So this is a lot of money, let's say 20,000 euros to annotate just this data set. And therefore we are looking for semi-automatic annotation, and I will come back later to algorithms, these semi-supervised or partially supervised learning algorithms, how to apply these in annotation. So let me briefly come to the next step. I would like to give a short introduction. I think it's not necessary here in this audience, but I would like to address a very special architecture, the so-called radial basis function architecture. As you all know, the neural networks are models that are derived somehow from the brain. So we have these simple neurons. I think it's not highly important to discuss this here. So we have lots of neurons, highly interconnected pieces. Signal processing is pretty low, so each neuron is simple and is slow. The only advantage in neural networks is the highly interconnectivity, and for the function we want to realize is the ability of neural networks to learn from examples by adaptation of these synaptic weights. Typically there are here different models. So this is one of these models, a similarity-based model. So this is typically used in neural networks, in particular in deep neural networks. So where the inner product is computed between the input to the neuron and the synaptic weights. And then some non-linearity, typically a increasing function, a monotonic increasing function, strictly increasing sometimes. Nowadays we have some variants that are not strictly increasing, that they are constants, for instance, these ReLU functions. But there is another one, so another application, another model that I would say is distance-based. So these distance-based models are typically also called radial basis function networks. And instead of the inner product, they are using a distance measure between the input and the synaptic weight. And here's a typical behavior here of the nonlinearity. It is to the distance between x and input and synaptic weight. Again, a function, a nonlinear function is applied, but the behavior of this function is similar to the Gaussian bell, or to a bell-shaped function where the neighborhood is integrated, and outside this neighborhood, the activity is suppressed. So this is, I would say, more a local model instead of the other, which is then more a global model. Okay, so, and learning in these neural networks are typically used here, defining a cost function, presenting data, and that's it. And for radial basis function, we have this architecture. This is here given in a single hidden layer architecture. And there is not much work about deeper radial basis functions, but we have done some work during the last year and found some ideas how to realize this in deep learning as well. Not published at the moment, try to do it. But in principle, we have a this type of network, and this could be also used in a deeper setting. And radial basis function networks are very flexible in learning. So we have different types of learning paradigms. So one way is to do it in a single phase. So this is typically done. For instance, the so-called support vector learning is a one-phase learning situation where the whole data is used here, and then only the output layer is trained. So this is a disadvantage, of course, of one-phase learning. But as you know, this support vector machine approach is very strong. So it is a one-phase learning setting. So the first layer is just is realized by the full data set, and then the support vector optimization approach does some sort of selection of the input data. So instead of moving the parameters in the feature space, this is a selection process in the input data space. So anyway, so more common is two-phase learning, where some sort of clustering is done in the first phase, and then some approximation approach, typically pseudo inverse matrix approach is then used. And then, of course, one could also train the full architecture then using a third phase, a backpropagation phase, to the radial basis function networks. So this could be seen as a disadvantage, because the RBF must be trained, or should be trained, in two phases: first fixing the input layer, then the hidden layer, and then the overall training. But this is always also a chance. If you have just the limited resources, you could train an approximation to the full network. Anyway, so this is just one idea to realize a neural network. So there are, of course, many others. So we have recurrent networks, kernel methods, and so on. So I think you are familiar with all these types, convolutional neural networks. We also are using these type of convolutional neural networks in different settings. So not only for vision problems, but also for speech problems. Typically, the data is then transformed from the time domain to the spectral frequency domain, and then convolutional neural networks can also be used to the spectrogram. So this is one important model that can be used to do feature learning. So given a specific task, so the relevant features can then be learned from the raw data. We all know that multi-layer neural networks are universal approximators, so they can learn any continuous function, and we only need, so to say, enough data to train them. Here is a simple idea. So how many data is needed here? This M is the number of or the size of the data set, and it depends on the error you want to have and the confidence you want to have on your approximation. And then the VC dimension, Wapnick-Charbonenko's dimension of the model that should be trained is important for the number of data that has to be used. This is still an equation that is correct. It seems to be that in deep neural network, we can also train bigger models with less data, but still we have also in deep learning, especially in deep learning, a model that needs a lot of data. So reduction of data set. So this could reduction of the training complexity by building some structure on the network. So so this could be important. So maybe another idea could be we should use deep instead of shallow networks. So to have then the option to train these networks, let's say first in the deeper layers, and then we can put on top layers that are retrained on the pre-trained data, or we could also use unlabeled data. So these are maybe some ideas to overcome these complexity bounds. Next, I would like to come to information fusion, the idea of, let's say, structuring the network. So in our application of multimodal effect recognition, we have the situation that we have different sensors. These different sensors may be vision, audio, and so on. And typically we use then several feature extraction schemes. So this could be, let's say, a fixed scheme, let's say a Mel frequency, coefficient, feature extraction in audio, or it could be some edge or edge detectors in vision. But this could also be a convolutional neural network that is trained on the given task. So we have these feature extraction modules for our different sensor modalities, and then finally we need here some fusion, some combination of these different channels to come to the overall decision. This can be done in several architectures. Here are just 3 of them. One idea could be, in principle, to combine all these channels in parallel, to concatenate these feature streams into one neural network, and then here is the combination. This is always a green square here, and then doing the decision here. This is the red small rectangular here. So this is one way. So the traditional one, I would say, to concatenate all the data. Another way could be here on the right hand side to handle all these modalities separately, to come to a decision, and then combining the decisions into an overall decision. This is here, let's say, the late fusion scheme. So we have then single decisions and then an overall decision. Neural networks are very flexible. So neural networks can be used to make these, let's say, intermediate combinations. So we are able to combine these modalities on different levels of the neural network. So we are not limited to the late or to the early fusion scheme. So therefore, neural networks are, I would say, the most flexible architecture in dealing with multimodal pattern recognition. Okay, so here's maybe, this is a late fusion scheme here. maybe this is, we can skip this here, so this doesn't make sense. So it makes sense, but just points here to this fusion layer, and the question is how to fuse these classifier decisions here. So the CIX, these are the classifier decisions, and these decisions are then combined. Typically, this is done in by some sort of a voting scheme, or one could use probabilistic voting. So these are different ways, but these ways to aggregate the decision is not very flexible. So better are trainable fusion schemes. So I would say, again, neural networks are very efficient here, or maybe support vector machines if you like more these kernel-based methods. But also these type of aggregation rule can be used can be used here for the training the decision scheme. Here are some first experiment here, combining video, audio, and another two biophysiological data streams. So the ECG, so I think this is very common, and electrodermal activity. So this is the skin conductivity in principle, and this is a very strong indicator for stress or something like this. And so this could give a could be used here. And we did it in a challenge. This was an international challenge. It's published here some years ago. And here's more or less our results. So this is here a part of the testing set. The prediction is the red one, and the ground truth is the blue line here. And of course, it doesn't fit very well, but it's not so bad. So, and here we have a study here on the different features. And here we are using the concordance correlation coefficient. So in principle, it is a correlation coefficient of the output and the ground truth. So this is a regression task. It's not a classification task. And here, in principle, we found that the combination of all of these is significantly stronger than the single challenge channels. Here we studied early fusion, late fusion, with trainable and fixed schemes, and here the fixed schemes was very simple. It shows the strongest classification rate, and we tested for the arousal and for the valence. So we have a two-dimensional emotional model. So first is arousal, so of the participant, and then the valence is positive or negative. And in principle, I would say the only result is, or the strongest result is that the fusion is significantly better in arousal and valence than the single channels. Sorry. So you may observe that the numbers are pretty slow, as small. I said that the numbers are correlation coefficients, so one would expect numbers in close to 1, maybe 0.9, but here we are in the best case 0.6. So this is, let's say, the uncertainty of the overall overall task. But all in all, so it was a challenge here at the ACM Multimedia Conference, but we were able to win this challenge here. So the numbers were low, but we were still the best competitor here in this competition. So I would then like to come to the next setting. So as I said, so using unlabeled data in the training process, this could help. Typically we want to have a data set that is fully labeled. But as I said, in particular for effect recognition, this could be difficult to achieve. And therefore, one could think about training schemes that are able to work with also with unlabeled data. And I would like to talk a little bit on this partially supervised learning. So what is partially supervised learning? So I used this term, I would say 10 years ago. So there was a small conference here in Ulm and then another one 2 years later in Nanjing that is called partially supervised learning. And then the term changed a little bit, I would say, to weakly supervised learning. So maybe this is a little bit better. So anyway, partially supervised learning or weakly supervised learning are meaning the same. So this is learning from data under partially or partial or weak supervision. And this could be interpreted in different ways. So there are a lot of examples here of so semi-supervised clustering, semi-supervised classification, also learning with reward or learning with multi-labels. So this could be seen as partially supervision. So learning with multi-labels could be also seen in different ways. So anyway, so this is, I would say this could be seen as an example of PSL, of partially supervised learning. But mainly active learning and supervised classification or supervised clustering. So these are very famous examples of supervised learning. So semi-supervised learning here tries to group or to cluster methods that attempt to get an advantage of unlabeled data that is used then for supervised learning. In clustering, typically pairwise constraints. So these constraints are then defined as how these two samples should be within a cluster, or oh no, these two guys shouldn't be in the same cluster. Active learning is more a learning, the family of learning algorithms that is, that has control over the data selection process. So it is more a supervised clustering. So it tries to select the relevant information from a bigger data set. So the idea is that the human expert that should label these data set is asked just for a smaller set of informative data. So here's the short animation here. So if we have, so in supervised learning, we do not have labels. So this is the situation. We have here some data points, and the only thing we can do is here to find prototypes, for instance, in clustering. So in the typical way to do supervised learning is then here to annotate the data. So you start here with data. So maybe this belongs to the red class, and here's a data point that belongs to the blue class. And then you go forward. So more and more data is annotated. And after a while, so the result is here, a fully labeled data set. And then you could do your supervised learning, and maybe you can find here a decision boundary here in this separable case. Now the question is, how can we reduce these annotation costs? So let's say starting again with this initial setting where we have one data point per class annotated. So one could try with semi-supervised learning. So maybe we have a small, very, very small fraction of the data that is labeled. Then we can use a very simple decision function, maybe here linear one, to separate these, or to could be overlapping, but anyway, we could do some supervised learning. And then we have this situation here, the decision boundary. And then we could start from the initially labeled data set by some diffusion process to say, here we have very confident label. This data should belong to the red class. And here we have around this blue, these dark blue data point that is labeled by the expert. We have some data that is also confident here. This is then unsupervised learning process. So, and then we can use these newly labeled data set, the original expert labeled data set, together with the confident data, and to retrain this. And this could then give maybe this new retrained decision boundary here, slightly different. And then again, we could ask for more confident data based on this new decision boundary. And this is overall an iterative process, but this could save some time. Active learning is a little bit different. So here, active learning, again, is starting with the same initial situation of very few labeled data set, computing the decision boundary, and then we are not looking for the confident labels. So we are looking for the data that is close to the decision boundary. So the data that is close to the decision boundary is, let's say, informative. If we know these data, so if we know that these two guys here belong to the red class and these three guys belong to the blue class, so then we are able, of course, just in these simple settings, that by retraining the new decision function, we have the decision function that is close to the decision function of the supervised setting, where we have annotated the full data set. And this is the idea of active learning. The idea is to do a selection process on the full data set, to ask for the informative data, and then to ask the expert only for this informative data, and the rest, maybe these guys here, these can be left unlabeled. So we do not need these labels for this data. Here is a result on an experiment with the support vector machine. The ground truth is here, let's say here, this one here, these are two different participants in our data set. So some experiments show, here this experiment is a little bit strange. we try to find it out what happened here, but this is just a an example that cannot be explained. This is just a setting that is, I would say, this is an example that is produced by chance. But here the others are very typical, show very typical behavior, so that we are able to start to get the performance of the fully trained setting, that is a dotted line here, by using maybe here in this setting we are, let's say, in the region of 15%, or somehow here maybe a little bit more, so that we can reduce the data by using this active learning process, the data annotation process, by using this active learning process significantly. Another point is that sometimes we have a situation that is like this. So we have data set that are partially labeled, and some of the data here, these guys here, these are fuzzy labeled. So we do not know, so does it belong to the red or to the blue class? So this is some mixture class. So we have this fuzzy labeled setting. And the question is, what can we do with this data? And yeah, some time ago, when we researched on support vector machines, we try to extend this approach to the fuzzy labeled support vector machines. Here is some. This can be easily done, so fuzzy labels can be incorporated here in the Lagrange function and in the overall constraint cost function that is then optimized by standard optimization procedures. And then we did some experiments on this data, and we found out so that this support vector machine can useful, but not in all situations. So here is on the x-axis is some degree of fuzziness, and if let's say the degree of fuzziness is pretty high, so then we cannot benefit from the fuzzy support vector machine approach, from this new cost function. And also if the degree of fuzziness is too low, so then we cannot take advantage of this fuzzy approach. But here in this window, in the smaller window, let's say in this intermediate fuzziness window, we can take advantage. So here the difference is given. So positive values show that the fuzzy support vector machine is better than the traditional one. So the fuzzy support vector machine can outperform, but it does not outperform in all cases the crisp support vector machine. Okay, but yeah, so this is another idea, another test also with the fuzzy support vector machine, what we can benefit from it. But let me go forward because time is running, and I would like to show a few examples here on effective data sets. Here, this is a data set that is recorded here in a setting of computer interaction, where the task for the user is to find the singleton element. And this is, of course, difficult in situations where we have here a 7x7 square. Of course, here it is in the right panel. It's easier to find as a singleton. and the person is paid depending on the time the person needs to find the singleton. So here in this bar goes down, and here we are in the situation. Here one could get 29 cents, and here, okay, here's more or less nothing to achieve. But anyway, so if in principle, if the person needs more time, so then the bar goes down, and the person will get less money. Yeah, here are the results. So the singleton, where the singleton are, and we are recording this bunch of data, and we try then to analyze this and to annotate this. Here we have a very efficient tool called Atlas that is used to analyze these multimodal data. I think I do not have time to explain this here, but again, this is available. So if you are interested to work with this system, this could be useful if you work in a very highly dimensional setting, so with many modalities. So then it can be useful or important to use this, and very helpful to use this kind of data. Oh yeah, this is just the general architecture. Let me show the results again of our data set here. The data set is a very, very big data set, 100 sessions, 60 persons. With 40 persons, we have 2 sessions. We have sessions of roughly 1 hour. So this is a very, very big data set. And the task was to find overload in a versus underload. So this is a very simple binary decision tasks. So the baseline would be 50%. And we did several tests here for the different modalities. We did a test, an individual test, where the classification is limited to a person. And then we did the inter-individual test. So this is also called leave one subject out. So we have an independent test person, and you can see easily a big gap between the individual numbers here and the inter-individual numbers. So, and this is not a surprise, because these overload, underload, this is a very individual state. So, and this is not, let's say, uniform over all persons. You know, so. But one can again observe that combination of all of them. Here we tried different schemes here to combine these modalities. Also, the way how to combine is important, of course. Another interesting setting is here the recognition of pain. So this is interesting, and this, I would say, is more important in the medical application. So this is a recognition of pain, maybe in a post-operative scenario in the intensive care unit. So where people have this pain, typically have strong pain, but they cannot say that they have pain. So typically they are they are not able to say their needs and so on. So this is a situation where an objective way to measure pain is an important way to work with these persons. And we are using this we are studying this in a setting where in a lab setting where a person here gets some pain. So the pain elicitation is done by some heat stimulation. Here is the so heat stimulation unit here. And we have, again, more or less the same setting as in effect recognition, using the same number of potentials. Again, video, audio. So audio is more or less the breathing, the audio modality of breathing. And here this shows here a typical outcome. Here we have the different elicitation situations. So we have red for high pain, we have green for lower pain, and yellow. And then here we have the measurements. Yeah, here again, so this is, I would say, it's redundant here a little bit more. And then we try to use these to use different combination schemes. So we are using deep learning models here realized by convolutional neural networks with several convolutional blocks here to analyze here these data. Here it is the ECG data. And then we combine this here, EDA, EMG, ECG. So this is, we try to put together all these different things. So again, we could achieve with this deep learning approach, I would say here, very good examples. You may observe here this high standard deviation. So this is a standard deviation between the persons. Typically, this is not recorded here in the previous work by the other studies, but this, I think this is very important to see, that we have this high variance between different people. We are testing, we are still working in this. So here also autoencoder architectures are used to train latent spaces of the overall feature spaces. So this comes then to this intermediate situation. Again, we can here see that using these shared or gated representation can achieve slightly better results than simply just concatenating the data set. So these are small changes. So this is typically not a big performance increasement. Yeah. Temporal combination is also efficient here, very efficient in this setting. So in the pain recognition setting, so recognition of temporal combination of the classification results over here the time is a minute. So here's I think 10 minutes. And if we have just 1 minute, so typically there is one pain event, so then we are pretty low. But if we have a longer setting, so then we typically have this setting that we can get a very confident classification of the pain event. And this is important to have it not let's say in the intensive care unit, so that we have a very confident decision that we can make a decision after, let's say, 5 or 6 minutes. Okay, that comes to the end. So I'm running a little bit out of time. So yeah, I've discussed some learning schemes of radial basis function networks. I've also tried to give the idea of multimodal effect recognition. First, that effect recognition is highly multimodal, that we need these observation of a patient or a participant in these different modalities. I have also stressed the idea that annotation could be very expensive and that we need, I would say, interactive tools to annotate this data, let's say, in a smart way. First, to find the informative data that is useful for our classification task, and not to annotate the data, let's say, from day 1 to day 100 of the data recordings. And then finally, I gave some results on the recognition experiments of effect and pain. And nowadays we are concentrating more on pain, I must say, because it is, I would say, it is for applications, it is much more important. So that's all for now. Thank you very much, and I'm sorry for for running out of time. So, and I'm happy to ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Friedhelm. It was a very impressive presentation. It's very much information and interesting items. Dear colleagues, who would like to ask a question? At least 2 questions we can ask. I mean, we have time.
Hello, may I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Okay, when we talk about machine and deep learning, usually we talk about generalized model. So we apply the same model for all cases. But as I think from applied point of view, different people have different thresholds for pain and so on. And it depends on some external factors. So in the morning, I feel pain much stronger than in evening and so on. So can we build a kind of parameterized model and change it based on some additional factors? Not only black box for all cases, but to add some parameters to adapt model.
Yeah, thank you very much for these questions. I did not raise this topic here, so I fully agree. I think in your question is let's say, a hypothesis. I think your answer is no. It is not possible, and I would believe that it is not possible, it is not possible to train a model that can be used for all, let's say, patients on the intensive care unit. We did also experiments in this direction, and we observed the following. So we are using we are training models individually per person. So and then we try to combine, or this is our observation. So in a setting of 90 people, so we have 90 subjects in the experiment, and we then build 90 classifiers, and then a new person is tested that is outside of these classification, and we observed the following, that it is not the best choice to use all models. Instead of this, it is much better to do some clustering process process in beforehand to identify the most similar persons to the new test person, and then just using, maybe this depends then again, roughly 20, I would say 20% of the persons to build 20% of the person and 20% of the data then of these persons that are most similar to the test person, and to retrain a new model that is then personalized to the test person. So I would say there is an extra point here, and I would say this must be solved by some sort of the best fitting data to the test person. So there's an extra task, I would say, that must identify a part of the training set that fits to the new test. This sounds a little bit strange, but I think in this kind of application, one must train a personalized model for the new test set. So one has to do some sort of design, maybe by some as we did within the multi-classifier approach, and then to collect the models that are the models that are pre-trained. So you must have the data, and you must have pre-trained models, and then you must have an extra scheme that can select the pre-trained, the best fitting pre-trained models and the data that is associated to these models. And a new training process must be done for this new individual. So I think this is a very good point. And I would say this is a new way in medicine. We have I think a similar idea. So it's not to have, let's say, one drug for all people,
Yes.
but maybe in cancer treatment, we do not have one drug that fits for all people, but we try to do some personalized medicine for this individual by doing DNA analysis and so on. And I would say this is also needed here. So I would say transfer learning is important here. Very good point. Yeah, I think this is open research at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for this.
Thank you very much for a very interesting question and especially interesting explanation. I'm sorry, colleagues, but we have no possibility to continue our talk just to be on schedule. That is why, let me say again, thank you very much, Friedhelm, for your presentation and following discussion. And I suggest you to join us in the next continuation of our conference.